Have you ever stood at an airport gate, watching someone walk away, and felt like your heart was being pulled in two directions at once? One part screaming to hold on, the other quietly whispering that letting go might be the kindest thing you can do. This is a story about that moment. The moment when goodbye doesn't feel like an ending, but like a strange kind of freedom. And if you've ever loved someone enough to let them go, then stay with me, because this story might feel a little too familiar. The airport was louder than usual that evening. Wheels rolling across polished floors, announcements echoing through the air, people hugging too tightly or rushing past without looking back. It was the kind of noise that made silence feel impossible, and yet inside him, everything felt quiet. Daniel stood near gate 27, hands buried in his jacket pockets, watching the departures board flicker as if time itself couldn't decide whether to move forward or stay still. Across from him stood Emma, holding her boarding pass with both hands, like it might fly away if she loosened her grip. They weren't fighting. They weren't crying. And somehow, that made it harder. They had met 3 years earlier in the most ordinary way, a coffee shop. A spilled drink. An awkward apology that turned into a long conversation about books and dreams. Back then, everything felt simple. Love felt like something that naturally grew when two people enjoyed being around each other. They laughed easily, planned trips they couldn't afford, and believed the future would figure itself out. But life has a way of asking questions love alone can't answer. Career opportunities came. Different cities called their names. Dreams that once aligned slowly began to diverge like two roads pulling apart. Daniel wanted stability, a quiet life close to family. Emma wanted movement, exploration, the kind of career that required risk and distance. They tried to compromise. They tried late-night phone calls, spreadsheets of possibilities, even promises they weren't sure they could keep. But love started feeling heavy, not because they didn't care, but because they cared so much that every decision felt like sacrifice. Sometimes love doesn't end with a dramatic breakup. Sometimes it fades into long conversations filled with pauses, where both people already know the answer, but are afraid to say it out loud. If this story is already hitting close to home, take a second right now, before we go deeper, and tap like and subscribe to English. It really helps the channel grow. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this one, you'll want to stay for the next journey too. The announcement for boarding echoed overhead, and Emma looked up instinctively. "They're starting soon," she said softly. Daniel nodded, but neither of them moved. Around them, strangers hugged quickly and parted. Some smiled through tears. Some looked relieved. Airports were strange like that, full of beginnings and endings happening side by side. Daniel remembered their first trip together, how excited she had been watching planes take off. She said airports felt magical, like anything could happen once you stepped onto a flight. Back then, he loved that about her. Now, he wondered if that same love was the reason he had to let her go. "Are we doing the right thing?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't the first time she asked, and it wouldn't be the last. Daniel wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her to stay, to forget the job overseas, to choose him over everything else. But he also knew what would happen if he did. She might stay physically, but a part of her would always wonder what she gave up. And love built on regret doesn't survive long. I think he paused, searching for words that wouldn't break them both. "I think sometimes the right thing doesn't feel good." She smiled sadly, eyes glistening but steady. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was honest. Time slowed. They talked about small things, her flight time, the weather in the city she was moving to, whether she remembered to pack her charger. The kind of conversation people have when they're avoiding the big goodbye waiting between sentences. Daniel noticed how calm she looked, and it scared him. Was she already moving on? Or was she just stronger than him? He realized then that love isn't always equal in how it hurts. One person might be ready to step forward while the other is still trying to hold the past together. A child ran past them laughing, dragging a suitcase twice his size. The sound made Emma smile genuinely for the first time that evening. "Life keeps going," she said. Daniel followed the child with his eyes and nodded. Life always keeps going. That was the problem. It doesn't pause just because your heart wants a little more time. They remembered the small moments, lazy Sundays, late-night drives with music too loud, the time they got lost on purpose just to keep talking. Those memories floated between them like fragile glass ornaments. Beautiful, but impossible to hold forever. Daniel realized he wasn't afraid of losing Emma. He was afraid of what came after the empty space where daily routines used to live, the messages that would stop, the silence that would grow. "Will we still talk?" she asked suddenly. It was the question nobody knows how to answer honestly. "Maybe," he said, and they both knew maybe meant probably not. Some relationships survive distance. Others need closure to heal. Keeping one foot in the past can stop both people from walking toward the future. The boarding line grew longer. People started moving forward. Emma looked at him, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The noise, the lights, the rushing crowd. Just two people standing at the edge of a choice they had already made. She stepped closer and hugged him tightly. It wasn't dramatic. It was warm, familiar, and heartbreakingly normal. He closed his eyes and memorized the moment. The way her hair smelled like the shampoo she always used. The slight tremble in her breath. "I don't want this to be a sad memory," she whispered. "Then don't make it one," he replied. "Make it the moment we were brave enough to let each other grow." She pulled back, eyes shining now. "You always say the right thing." She laughed softly. "No," he said. "I just say the thing I wish someone would say to me." The final boarding call sounded. There was no more time left to stretch. She took a step backward, then another. He wanted to chase her, to rewrite the ending. But instead, he stood still. Sometimes love means staying still, when every instinct tells you to run. She turned once more before entering the line, giving him a smile that was both goodbye and thank you. Then she walked away, and just like that, it was over. No dramatic music, no cinematic rain, just an ordinary airport and an extraordinary silence. Daniel stood there longer than he needed to, staring at the gate long after she disappeared. Around him, life continued as if nothing significant had happened. People laughed. New passengers arrived. Another flight prepared to leave. He finally sat down near the window overlooking the runway. Planes lifted into the sky, one by one, each carrying someone toward a new chapter. He wondered if freedom always came with pain. Maybe that was the price of growth. The willingness to feel loss without turning it into bitter. He realized something important in that moment. Letting go doesn't erase love. It changes its shape. It becomes gratitude instead of possession. Weeks passed. Daniel returned to his routine, though it felt different now. The apartment was quieter. The coffee shop they once shared felt unfamiliar. He almost texted her dozens of times, but stopped himself. Healing required space. Slowly, he started filling his days with things he had ignored, old hobbies, friends he hadn't seen in months, quiet evenings where he learned to enjoy his own company again. The ache didn't disappear, but it softened. One evening, months later, he received a message from her. Just a simple photo of a sunrise from a new city with the words, "I hope you're okay." He smiled, not because the pain returned, but because it didn't hurt the same way anymore. He replied, "I am. Hope you're happy." And that was enough. No long conversation, no reopening wounds. Just two people acknowledging that they once mattered deeply to each other. The truth is, not every love story is meant to last forever. Some people enter our lives to teach us something: courage, patience, self-respect, or how to say goodbye without anger. Daniel began to understand that their relationship wasn't a failure. It was a chapter that ended exactly when it needed to. And that realization felt surprisingly freeing. The next time he visited an airport, he noticed something different. He watched strangers embracing, tears and laughter mixing in the same space, and he didn't feel sadness. He felt understanding. Airports weren't just about departures. They were about trust, trusting that the people we care about will find their path, even if it leads away from us. If you've ever had to let someone go, you know this feeling. The strange mix of grief and peace. The moment when you realize love isn't about holding on tighter, but about wishing someone well, even when you're no longer standing beside them. That's the kind of freedom people rarely talk about, the freedom that comes from acceptance. And maybe you're watching this right now because you're standing at your own emotional airport, wondering whether to hold on or let go. Maybe you're afraid that saying goodbye means losing everything. But sometimes goodbye is not the end of love. It's the beginning of understanding yourself. It's choosing growth over comfort, honesty over fear. Daniel eventually met new people, laughed again, and felt hope return in small, unexpected moments. But Emma's memory remained, not as a wound, but as a reminder that love can be beautiful even when it doesn't last forever. Some stories don't need a perfect ending to be meaningful. As the story closes, imagine that airport one last time, lights glowing softly, announcements echoing, travelers moving toward unknown destinations. Somewhere in that crowd, two people choose courage over convenience. They say goodbye not because they stopped caring, but because they cared enough to set each other free. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a goodbye that secretly felt like freedom? Share your story in the comments. Your thoughts might help someone else feel less alone. And if this story touched you even a little, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Stories grow stronger when they're shared. Thank you for spending these moments here with Until next time, remember, sometimes the hardest goodbyes open the doors to the most meaningful beginnings.